Welcome back to the football season. Are you having fun yet? Guys, that loss sucked. It doesn't feel good to lose a football game, let alone with so much opportunity on the table. There are a few key reasons why this game feels as bad as it does right now. Losing it feels so bad, and a lot of Aggies are kind of up in arms about what happened Saturday night. I think it all has to do with the opportunity at hand, mostly. But it also has to do with the fact that the quarterback that you're banking on, a quarterback you feel really, really good about, a quarterback in Connor Wigman who you've probably defended and hyped up, whether it's online or amongst your buddies, over the last several months, dating back to when he was knocked out of the game versus Auburn, he laid an egg. That makes you feel bad for believing in him. That makes you feel bad for hyping him up. And it makes this whole loss feel a lot worse because the one thing we were riding on in the year, offensively, was that you had an elite quarterback. And the fact that he came up short, it just feels really bad to a lot of Aggies, and I totally get it. And just the fact that you're 13-13 with 6 minutes left in the game, had a chance to win it, and they were the team that performed in the clutch. They were the team that executed really well down the stretch, played their best football in the last 6 minutes of the game, and you weren't. That all feels terrible, and it happened at home, and it happened with College Game Day. It happened with the nation watching, and that's all really bad. Maybe it feels embarrassing, and it's just not a good feeling. It's just not a good feeling to lose the first game of the year with those opportunities. But guys, I rewatched the game. I took notes on every single play, and believe it or not, you might find this hard to believe, there were positives. There were improvements in areas we were looking for, specifically the offensive line, and really the defense overall, despite a few shaky stretches of the game and a few specific plays where things really broke down. But overall, just at the top of this video, I feel really, really good about the defense, and the offense is solid quarterback away from being pretty dang good. Because there was opportunity there, and the quarterback couldn't find it. Very unfortunate. We'll talk more about Connor Wigman in a second and what he has to do, he must do for this team to find success, what this team can do to find success. But I really want to break this game down, go position group by position group, because it's a big game, but it's also our first glimpse of the team. So we want to talk about rotations. We'll talk about some guys we saw, what we saw from those guys, talk about all that stuff. So it's going to be a longer video today, guys, so buckle in. If you're not into positivity, or if you don't want to relive this game, again, you don't have to watch this video. The post-loss stuff is not for everybody. I get it, because I'm just going to say it how it is and how I see it. There will be positives. There will be negatives. There will be a path forward. We're going to talk about the path forward, how things are corrected, how things must progress for this team to find success. And we're going to go back to an old cliche. You've heard it before. You might shake your head when you hear it. You might shake your head when you think about it. But it's true. Teams largely improve from week 1 to week 2 in a season, especially under a new staff. So that's something we're banking on. We might not get definitive answers versus McNeese because it's McNeese, but you're going to find out soon enough. You have Florida, you have Arkansas, you have Missouri, all right around the corner. You're going to need to figure some things out offensively by then. But I think we're off to a decent start defensively. So, first of all, I want to give you guys my thoughts on how the game kind of flowed and went. So this is kind of a big picture conversation we're going to talk about. And guys, before I get into it, if you guys could like and subscribe, that would help me greatly. I'm going to keep putting out content. I put a lot of time into this stuff, and if you appreciate it, it would really help if you could just drop a like and a sub if you can. But I enjoy doing it, so even if you don't, I'm going to keep doing it. But let's start with my big picture thoughts, the flow of the game, how things went, the feel of the game, and then we'll get more specific as the video goes along, and we'll eventually go position by position. So I felt good about A&M's opening drive to the game, as I'm sure you did too. It was a good scripted drive. Connor was fairly accurate on a couple of balls. You ran pretty well, and unfortunately, it ended with a mishap. It was a little bit of an overthrow on, I think it was like a swing route to E.J. Smith, off his fingertips. Could have been a first down or more with about 15 yards to go to the goal line, and you didn't capitalize on that opportunity. You settled for 3. Defense came out, played pretty well. You held them to 6 points in the first half. But the common thread in this game, the thing that kept coming up and what made me feel uneasy sitting in my seat in that game was that every time you were trying to build momentum, every time you had an opportunity early in the game, specifically first half, you made a mistake. For instance, the sneak play, 3rd and 1, you have a beautiful design. You start a spread look. You motion guys into more of a power look. Connor goes from shotgun to under center. Beautiful sneak. You get the first down. Ja'Day Walker doesn't know the play. He's still moving. He's not set. They throw the penalty. That's negated. You're in a third and medium. You don't get it. Later in the game, you're driving. You get a stop. You feel pretty good. You throw an interception. Before the half, you're on a decent little drive. Connor Wigman throws a bad interception. That was probably his worst ball of the night. He forced it. There wasn't anything there. And Xavier Watts, the opportunist that he is, gets the interception. In addition to mistakes, penalties, that kind of a thing that just kind of stifled your momentum in the game early on, you also had a bunch of injuries that kind of also slowed momentum. You had Armaj Adams go down for a couple of plays. TJ Shanahan goes in, and you know what? TJ Shanahan's going to have a big role this year, especially now that we've learned that Mark Naboo's out. But Shanahan gives up a sack in one of his first plays in to Howard Cross, another elite player. Matchup you lost. And things like that just prevented your offense from getting into a flow on top of inaccurate quarterback play. By now, the time I'm recording this, we've heard Connor Wigman talk. Obviously, he's well aware of his performance. The team is well aware of his performance. Very admirable of him to go up and take to the podium after that performance. He owned up to it, as you would expect a competitor like himself would. But both him and Elko acknowledged that Connor Wigman just played rush to this game. There wasn't as much pressure as how he played. He played every snap, kind of desperately, chopping his feet too much, not getting his feet set on his throws. And his balls were just inaccurate the entire night. Even some of his completions were not in good catching pockets for his receivers. And, I mean, what can you say? We have not seen that kind of game from Connor Wigman going back to his high school career, his freshman stretch of games that he played here, and early in 2023 before he got hurt. By far, not even close, the worst Connor Wigman we have seen. And that killed your chances offensively. And we talk about separation with the receivers. If you go back and watch it, there was some separation. It wasn't perfect. That's a really, really good secondary. We'll talk about that in a second. But Connor Wigman just couldn't get the ball to them. Even if you had opportunities, there were time and time again, you just were inaccurate and you couldn't find flow. So you come out of the half, they have the ball first. They keep going for it on fourth down. They convert one, but then you get the huge stop on the short by a hair measurement that got reviewed where Riley Leonard tried to extend over the first down marker. You got the stop. You get the ball back, and you have some momentum building to start the half. But once again, the next drive, you just have a mishap on the fourth down conversion because A&M began to go for it too because you built some trust in that defense. You're finding out that every offensive opportunity, that could be the game right there. Both teams going for it on fourth down at this point in the game. You have more bad balls by Wigman, and then you had this thing where you were really, really trying to get the offsides. We'll talk about the hard count in a second that they were doing, the clap cadence they were doing in the game. They were trying too hard for the offsides. In this situation, there were several errors here. I think you had 3 blunders off of the offsides attempts that trying to draw them offsides. This one, on the 4th and 5, I think it was, you did the hard count. They minorly flinched, but Connor acted as if it was clearly an offsides, throws up a free play kind of a ball that wasn't very accurate, or the receiver didn't track it. I think it was Micah Tees. And it just ends up being an incompletion, no flag, and they get the ball back. So you kind of X out that big defensive moment you had in the game with another offensive blunder, and this time it was one of those snap count things. Let's talk about that for a second. I really, really, really liked the snap cadence that Colin Klein enacted in the game. I see a lot of people complaining about how slow the offense was in the pre-snap. I thought that stuff really helped the offensive line get an advantage. You saw early in the game, Notre Dame had a lot of trouble with the snap count, jumping off sides, not being able to time it up, and that is really, really beneficial for an offensive line. You get the upper hand, you get to go when you know the ball's going and they don't get to track it. They leaned too much on that offsides on the third down situations where they tried to draw them. It resulted in offensive linemen getting too aggressive with trying to react to players in the neutral zone. That resulted in 2 false starts, and then you had this play with Connor that I just described. But I really liked what they did pre-snap, and I'll tell you a couple of reasons why. Constant motion, and not just motion, late alignments. You had constant shifts, not getting into your final formation till later in the snap count. But you have to keep in mind something they're doing this year is they're feeding Connor Wigman information until 15 seconds left in the play clock. So they're getting aligned really, really early. They're getting on the field at the line of scrimmage with about 20, 25 seconds to go. That's a huge godsend compared to last year. They were hurrying between plays, but they weren't usually hurrying pre-snap. But what you can do with those extra 5-10 seconds before the headset comms cut off at 15 is you're able to feed more reads to Connor Wigman, feed an audible to Connor Wigman. So they're aligning early, and they're doing their shifts and snap count stuff through the later duration of the play clock. You saw the 3-clap cadence. You saw 2-clap cadence. You saw them shift it from 3 to 1 late in the game, which kept the defense off balance. You even saw some quick snaps, which I really, really liked. And you had one opportunity where you did a quick snap when you were in the middle of your 3-clap cadence. They randomly switched to a 1-clap. You caught the defense standing up. The defensive line wasn't even settled. But you had the tight end, I believe, run the wrong play because he disregarded the man in front of him. I'm assuming he expected some sort of split block or some sort of puller to get that defensive end. It was just a zone play, and that one unblocked player made the play, and you had a convoy and just a leverage advantage from starting the play before they were ready to start it. So I liked the idea of it. You didn't execute with it in a lot of cases, but I think it's going to be a huge weapon for this offense going forward. I'm very, very happy with that development of the offense. It's just a new wrinkle, and it really, really helps the offensive line and Connor reading the defenses. You get a lot of time to read. You get to do a lot of shifts and motions to really understand how they're playing their coverages. I like that. Let's move on to the fourth quarter. Just still going with the flow of the game before we get into some individuals. Down the stretch of the game, you played your worst few defensive possessions. You played really, really well secondary-wise, stopping the run throughout most of the game. I really liked Marcus Ratcliffe in the run game. I really liked Scooby Williams in the run game. Overall, Scooby Williams played really well. And on my second watch through, rewatching the game, the defensive line definitely won the battle. It wasn't a domination, but they were successful more often than not. Notre Dame was just better in the clutch of the game. That's when they dominated, and that was the deciding factor in the game. But overall, defense played well. That last drive where, that one drive where Jadarian Price had the 50-yard touchdown run, that was probably the worst defensive play of the night. Torin York, bad angle, still had an opportunity to tackle, missed tackle. I think most of the defenders were expecting Price's momentum to be stopped at that point of contact, and you saw that happen right here. Torin York just doesn't really stop his momentum at all. All the secondary is kind of committing to him at that angle, but he's not stopped, so he just bounces it outside. You had Jaden Hill, one of his first plays in the game in that second half because he was serving a suspension in the first half from targeting last year. He was not in the right angle to make the play. Bryce Anderson started getting aggressive towards that point of contact, that would-be contact with Torin York. He's not able to get that bounce out. Same thing for Des Ricks at the corner. He's kind of pursuing where he thinks the contact's happening. Everyone's flowing this way. Jadarian Price has full momentum, bounces it out. Big touchdown run. That was the worst defensive play of the game, in my opinion. But then you had certain drives. For the most part, it was all really good, but certain drives were just angles and pursuit was just bad by the secondary. Late in the game, that whole last drive was defined by that. They also blocked really, really well. They also really, really clutched up in the receiving game with Bo Collins getting that contested grab over Will Lee. And that was defended well. It was just a better catch. And probably should have thrown for unsportsmanlike conduct with the shove after the catch, but we're not going to complain about that here because he should have been in a better position to win the game. Anyway, they played better in those last 6 minutes than A&M did. But before that, you did see A&M get their one touchdown drive of the game by way of good running. You had E.J. Smith sub in, get a good run. You forced a couple of penalties. There was that corner route to Jade that could have been a touchdown if the defender didn't hold on to him because he had open space between him and the corner of the end zone. The ball was there, held on to him, but you still were able to punch it in and score. It was a desperate effort. Took 3 plays at the goal line. You finally got it in. But like I said, down the stretch, you didn't perform offensively. They performed offensively. Riley Leonard's running ability, designed runs, ability to get the ball out quick. He clutched up. He won the game. And we talked about it before the game. Riley Leonard was their X factor. He was the game changer. A lot of new pieces on the offensive line, new everything there, new coordinator, which was probably honestly a benefit to them because they played their best ball late and A&M didn't. So just general flow of the game stuff for the most part. Final statement on this. Defense played a good game besides a couple of drives and plays that really bit you in a close game like this. But you held them to 13 with 6 minutes to go. You held them to 23 total. That can win you a game if the offense can put up points. Offensively, You just didn't have passing rhythm at all. You didn't really have a passing game in the entire game. Running was pretty good. Would have done better with the threat of the pass. That wasn't there. They faded the pass quite a bit down the stretch of the game. Started to lean more on just zone running inside, because that's where you're finding some success. They didn't want to risk a turnover in the game down the stretch, because that's what Connor Wigman was doing. He was throwing bad balls, and there was risk of turnover there. Defenses were playing well. They vanillaed up, ran the ball more. That's how I saw it happen. Okay, moving into individual positions. We talked about Wigman. I mean, he just has to be better, right? He has to be confident. He has to bounce back. He has to set his feet. We haven't seen this play from Connor Wigman at all in his entire time. High school, college. This is his worst game we've ever seen from him. And speaking on Notre Dame, that's the best defense we're going to see all year. Right now, there's not a shadow of a doubt in my mind that that's the best defense on the schedule. Now, there might be some bigger bodies you play. There might be some better athletes you play. But there's not a more mature and better coached defense with defined stars going into a season than Notre Dame. They had the Nagurski winner. They had a top 10 draft pick at corner. They probably have more draft picks in that corner rotation that are young guys right now. That defensive line has 3 top 100 guys on draft boards right now. They're all grad transfers. That was the premier defense of the season. That's a defense that shut down Caleb Williams. That's a defense that shut down Ohio State's wide receivers last year. And now they're a year more mature, a year more developed, and they did it to A&M. On top of that, Connor Wigman never found his footing, never found his rhythm. It can only get better from here, but how much better will it get? I would argue it can get a lot better, because we've seen it from Connor before. He took to the podium, he acknowledged everything that happened as you would expect him to do, and we move on. We hope for the best, and we're not in a position to be benching Connor Wigman yet. We're not even talking about that yet. You know you have good backups, but you have Connor Wigman, and that is the ceiling of your offense. That's the one piece you look at on this offense and say, yep, that guy has shown that he can be a top player in his position group. You need that guy to be himself. So you give him time, big bounce back opportunity versus McNeese, big Florida game after that. We'll talk more about that when the time comes. I thought the positive of the offense was the offensive line. It wasn't perfect, but they absolutely held their own against that really good defensive front I was just talking about. Armaj Reed-Adams, Chase Basantis, Trey Zune, as expected, were really, really good in the game. Very happy with that trio. At center, unfortunately, we've heard by now, Mark Naboo went down for the year. Colino Feu was the highest PFF graded player on the team. You know, he had good moments and bad, but you're going to lean on him a lot this year. And I think the jury's very much still out on him. He only had about 6 starts at Utah. It's his time now. At right tackle, it turns out Demetrius Crownover won that battle. That was supposed to be a shuffle going into the year, I would think, based on what we were hearing from the coaches, based on the depth chart with the Fothery or Crownover at that position group. Crownover played the whole game, and as we've seen from him before, up and down player, especially in run blocking. His face got crossed a bunch, and against the quicker guys, you know, he kind of stands up a little bit, and he's not a super sound run blocker yet. But I will say it's probably the best performance we've seen out of him in the last couple of years, and that's the most we've leaned on him since he got on campus. So something to work on, something to build on. You need better right tackle play, and you need to find consistency at the center position. But overall, I cannot complain about the offensive line. Protection was good, but the quarterback played as if it was bad. He played rushed the whole game, even when he had good protection. You give up 1 sack, you give up a few pressures, but for the most part, and especially compared to what we've seen before, and especially relative to the talent across the field with Notre Dame, played an admirable performance, that offensive line. I'm very encouraged by it, very happy about it. You lose Mark Naboo. It's a big loss. You didn't have him in the second half of the game, but you scored your 1 touchdown without him. So you're still able to do stuff. You're deep in the interior. We're going to have to see TJ Shanahan, who was the first backup to get into the game on that interior. He beat out Cam Dewberry, and he's the first guy off the bench. You're going to see him more this year. He also played on goal in the goal line plays. He was in that tight end extra blocker offensive lineman. They put in a 6th blocker in the tight end slot, and it was TJ Shanahan. He's the guy off the bench. He's going to play a big role this year now that Naboo is down. But I'm encouraged by what I saw from him, even though he gave up the 1 sack. He's been playing really well, had a really good spring. He's been on a really, really positive trajectory since getting on campus. I'm very, very encouraged by the offensive line. They're going to give Connor a chance to get better. They're going to give Le'Veon Moss a chance to continue to showcase his ability. One of the most impactful offensive players of the game. He was one of the players that was able to make things happen on his own in open field in the receiving game. Now, obviously, he's not a super polished receiver. That's an issue we've seen with him before. He had a couple big drops last year. We saw him unable to realize where he was on the field on that 3rd and 1 situation where he caught the ball on the out route. With about a half yard to go, he didn't have the wherewithal to extend and get that first down. He needs to work on his receiving game, but they used him a lot in the receiving game. They spread him out wide. They put him in motion. He was all over the field. It's a big year for Le'Veon Moss, and I'm encouraged by the fact that him and this offensive line showed positivity in this game. Something to build on. Amari Daniels had a couple of big runs. Clearly a running back 2 in this system. They're going to lean on Le'Veon Moss. E.J. Smith, kind of a change of pace back late in the game. Fresh legs they put in the game. He had a big run in that touchdown drive. Cool to see that. Lean on Le'Veon Moss. Big player for this offense. There wasn't complementary football, though, between the offense and defense and between the running game and the passing game. Receivers, yes, more separation than I initially thought on my second viewing, but it still has to be a lot better. And of course, the cloud that hangs over this discussion, really freaking good secondary. But there were times where the receivers didn't know their assignments. Part of the learning curve of learning a new offense, I would assume that's something that gets better because it wasn't every single play, but there were some key plays where receivers ran the wrong routes, ran into each other, didn't know where to align, were aligning late. That kind of thing needs to get cleaned up with the receivers, and there has to be more separation. But let's give it some time because, again, for the millionth time, one of the best secondaries in the country. They got to be better. They just have to be better. Passing game overall has to improve. But it is a positive that the offensive line pass pro did hold up pretty well this game. Defensive side of the ball, overall, I would say was a positive defensive performance. Happy with it. Really happy with the secondary. Really happy with the safeties. Really happy with keeping the plays bottled up. You didn't give up anything big besides the one Jadarian Price run and the one contested grab by Bo Collins over Will Lee. You did give up a few comeback routes, a few curls, a few outs on the outside against soft coverage, but I have a feeling that was by design. They were able to tackle well on those one-on-one scenarios to bottle that up. And overall, like I said, no big plays besides a couple of key ones that bit you in the butt. Defensive line played much better than I thought on the second viewing. A lot of havoc was created. I didn't feel like the nose position was specifically impactful on the game, though. I still feel like that's a weak link. I still feel like you miss McKinley Jackson there. A couple of good moments by Regis. I didn't see much from Hicks. I saw some good impact by Rodas Johnson. He only had a few snaps this game, but he missed every tackle that he had. Every time he was within arm's reach, he wasn't able to bring guys down. But I was really happy with the Shamars, and Nick Scorton played hurt for most of that game, but he had some good moments in the game as well. I don't know if they called it a sack or not because Riley Leonard extended and got it back to the line of scrimmage. Had a tackle on Riley in the backfield. Had a tackle for loss. Was in the backfield a lot. Flushed Riley Leonard out a lot. They won the battle. It wasn't the huge domination that we were banking on. That offensive line played really, really well. Better than you would have expected. And they played their best ball in the last 6 minutes of the game, and that's where it really mattered the most. But let's talk about the rotations really quick that we saw in the secondary. We saw Marcus Radcliffe, Bryce Anderson, Tyreek Chappelle, Javen Thomas, and Will Lee as your starting defensive back group. On third downs, the first few third downs of the game, you saw them take the nose out. They took Regis out or they took Hicks out. They brought in the jack. The first jack they played in the game, which is your stand-up edge rusher on third downs, Cassius Howell type, your Ryland Kennedy type, they brought Ryland Kennedy on the field first. He was the first jack on the first 3rd and 5 of the game. They went 3-man front, stand-up rusher. He was kind of in a middle linebacker position, but he was a blitzer. And, you didn't have the typical Elko where everyone comes on the line of scrimmage and you have certain guys dropping back. They didn't do that till later in the game because I think Riley Leonard probably expected that. So they kind of changed it up and gave that different look. And it was successful a few times. It really worked. You still had your outside linebackers or your Marcus Radcliffes closer to the line of scrimmage. They weren't in that pure blitz look, but they were playing near the box. And you didn't know for sure where the pressure was coming from, and it worked. It worked several times. You played well enough on defense to win the game. But interesting to see Ryland Kennedy get that first look. However, when you first subbed out your defensive end on the down-to-down basis, that was Cassius Howell going in for, I believe it was Shamar Stewart first. And it wasn't a long leash. It wasn't a deep bag of defenders that you saw on that D-line. As we saw before with Elko, he's going to lean on his stars, and you saw that. You saw Shamar Stewart, Shamar Turner, and Nick Scorton out there. Every snap, at least one of them was out there. You saw Rodas Johnson get about 5 snaps on the game. You saw DJ Hicks sub for Regis. Regis got a majority of the reps at nose guard, and you saw them just lean on those guys. And I thought they played well enough to win you the game against, that shaky offensive line, that young offensive line that's going to be really, really good after going through this. Linebackers, I think, played decently for most of the game, but on all the big plays in the game that you gave up, unfortunately, Torrin York made bad plays on those plays. Torrin York had bad plays on the big plays of the game. I'm saying plays a million times. It's hard to articulate it, but Torrin York played poorly in the big moments of the game, and that was very, very unfortunate, and he knows it. He acknowledged it right after the game. He says, it starts with me. It was my fault. I need to get them ready, and I need to play better. He didn't play terribly the whole game, but in those key moments, he was bad in the run fit. He got washed away in that line of scrimmage, and things were able to squirt out through his gap. That happened on 2 or 3 big plays on the game, and that was kind of the defining moments of the defense right there. Torrin needs to play better. I really liked what we saw from Scooby Williams. We didn't see Solomon DeShields at all this game. It was Scooby and it was Samford. And on third down, sometimes they went to one linebacker, and more often than not, that was Scooby Williams. Scooby Williams is your athletic one you want against the pass looks. They took Torrin York out on some of those third down plays I failed to mention, and they brought in an extra safety. Early in the game, that was Dalton Brooks, but unfortunately, he targeting on his first play of the game. And later in the game, it was Trey Jones, who I thought played really, really well at the line of scrimmage too. Yeah, so a lot to say that defense, we're in really, really good hands, guys. I think it's going to improve a lot from that week 1 performance, putting everything on film. Big step up in opposition from Marcus Radcliffe, and he was all over the field. Took a few bad angles, got a little bit overly aggressive at times, but still made a huge impact on the game. He's going to be so better after getting that one game under his belt. Really encouraged by that. Surprisingly, Bryce Anderson took a lot of bad angles too, kind of dove for some tackles that he missed and whiffed on. He'll get better from that. You expect better from Bryce Anderson. But overall, I would say that safety group and that secondary group as a whole was a positive on the game. Torrin York needs to clean it up. Defensive line, keep doing what you're doing. Nose guard, just settle in, play better. I want to see more impact from that nose position. That's one thing we're gonna need to see going forward. And just an additional note, I really liked how Dalton Brooks stayed connected and locked into the game. We saw him and Elko have a candid conversation after he made the bad play and targeted on the slide of Riley Leonard. I can't wait to see this safety room because I think we have proven, it's been proven by now that that's going to be a strength of the team. I think Marcus Radcliffe and Trey Jones are just the icing on top of the cake. I didn't know if those guys were going to play a huge impact right away in the year. I knew Marcus Radcliffe had potential. Didn't expect him to start. Didn't expect him to play really well or have really good moments and just really be involved with the game. Trey Jones was a monster every time he was on the field. They leaned on him a lot. Jaden Hill went in and didn't look like he really got his footing in the game. It's kind of weird to start at halftime. I'm going to be willing to give him another look. I thought Tyreek Chappelle played really well. I thought the corners, they targeted the corners a couple times, but like I said, they tackled well to bottle it up. And the entire secondary was very active in run support. So I think the secondary and the defensive line and the linebacker group, all 3 levels, have a chance to be really stinking good this season. Just clean a few things up. You have a couple of weeks to get right there against probably worse offenses than Notre Dame, and then you must be a lot better when you're playing Missouri because you don't want to get into a shootout until you absolutely have Connor Wigman back as a full Connor Wigman, being himself. But all right, guys, that about does it for my position-by-position breakdown and looking at everything. I think we've said it all. Moving forward, you're a good quarterback play away from a much different offense, and you won't play a defense that good again. It's time to get right over these next couple of weeks. You want to see clean play within yourself because McNeese isn't going to give you the look that you need to feel good, but you'll feel good if you play mistake-free, you're accurate, you play confidently, and you just bounce back in a big way. I'm not going to do a McNeese State preview video this week. I won't do that. I might do a further follow-up video on the game and what needs to improve. We're not going to do that, but this is a great opportunity to get right. And then another opportunity versus Florida. Florida looked very, very, very manageable in their game versus Miami. If going into the year, I said you were going to split Florida and Notre Dame, I predicted Notre Dame the win, Florida the loss. The flip-flop of that is very much on the table right now, but you got to see the improvement from Connor Wigman. I think this defense will keep you in games. I think it needs to improve by the time you play, Arkansas and Missouri, and start seeing some SEC offenses that are going to be comparable to what you just saw with Notre Dame and Mike Denbrock. Arkansas looked good in their opener versus nobody, but they're going to test you more than McNeese or Bowling Green will, or Florida even, and then Missouri. That's going to be a big one that we need to talk about when the time comes. So I think the room for improvement on this defense, there's just marginal stuff they can do to clean up down to down and not get in those bad stretches, but very, very happy with it. Happy with the offensive line. Connor needs to play better. Receivers need to play better, and we move on from there. Guys, that's about it. Not much more I can say without going into film breakdown, and I'm not doing that today. Maybe we'll do that at some further point when I have more time on my hands. Don't have time to make that kind of video. Go back and watch the game if you have the stomach for it. It was brutal to do it. There was some good moments, and it was nice to enjoy the atmosphere again, but just watching the home stretch of that game with the opportunities you had to win hurts a lot to rewatch. But there were positives, guys. You build from this. The season is not over. Don't say that. Don't feel like it's over. Don't feel like there's nothing to play for now. Don't feel like we're a 5-win team. I've seen people saying, "Oh, we're a 7-win team." We're not even there yet. Let's go out week to week and see the improvement. It's going to all be about how you respond to this loss. Everything's on film now. They're going to improve. Let's see Connor become himself again. Guys, I'll see you very soon. This video is probably coming out like an hour before I'm going live, looking at the time right now. So if you're watching this, catch me at 7 o'clock today. I'm going to do a live show, give you guys an opportunity to call in and vent about the game. Give me your thoughts on the game. I'm going to be all ears in that one. And then I'll see you guys again on Thursday night on the live show. Call in again. Talk about what you want to see in the McNeese game. Talk about whatever you want. I'll drop another couple of videos here and there throughout the week, even though there won't be a McNeese video. But guys, thanks for watching. Like and subscribe. I'll see you soon. Gig 'em.